My narcissistic brother, 24M, says he's destined to be president and is suing me for my inherited estate because he needs a proper seat of power. Hi everyone! Today's story will blow your mind, but really quick, if you enjoy this content, hit that subscribe button. Channel's been a bit quiet lately, and your support keeps it all going. Let's jump in. Original post. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but I need to get this off my chest before I lose my mind. I'm James, 28M, and I'm dealing with a situation involving my younger brother Michael, 24M, that's gotten completely out of control. Some background is necessary to understand the full scope of this insanity. My grandfather, Charles Harrison, passed away 18 months ago and left me his estate, a beautiful 40-acre property with a historic home in Virginia that's been in our family since 1892. The main house is a stunning colonial revival with 12 rooms, original hardwood floors, and a library containing first editions collected over generations. There's also a guest house, a converted barn, and gardens that my grandmother Elizabeth designed herself in the 1960s. Grandpa and I were always close. Starting when I was 7, I spent every summer there helping him maintain the property. He taught me woodworking in his shop, showed me how to repair the antique windows, and shared countless stories about our family history. I was the only grandchild who showed genuine interest in preserving the family legacy, not for glory or prestige, but because I loved the craftsmanship, the history, and the memories embedded in every corner of that place. Michael, on the other hand, visited maybe twice a year and spent those visits complaining. The Wi-Fi was too slow, the rooms smelled old, there was nothing to do. He once told Grandpa that the estate was a monument to boring dead people, and suggested selling it to developers for actual money instead of dusty memories. Grandpa never forgot that comment. When Grandpa's will was read, the estate went to me. The will was explicit about why. To my grandson James, who understands that some things matter more than money, who sees the value in preservation over profit, and who has shown through action, not words, his commitment to maintaining our family's history. There were other assets distributed among family members. Michael received $75,000 for his education and career development, plus Grandpa's investment portfolio worth another $50,000. My parents received the vacation home in Florida and a substantial cash inheritance. Everyone seemed fine with it initially. Michael even joked that he was glad he didn't get the old pile of maintenance headaches. That changed 6 months ago when Michael decided he was destined for political greatness. The transformation happened seemingly overnight. Michael attended some motivational seminar called Unleash Your Inner Dynasty and came back a completely different person. He announced at family dinner that he'd had an awakening about his purpose in life. According to him, he'd been walking through the conference center when he saw his reflection in a mirror and suddenly understood. He was meant to be a senator, then president, possibly even more. I realized, he said, standing up at the dinner table like he was addressing Congress, that I've been hiding from my destiny. Our family is meant to be the next great American political dynasty. We have the bloodline, the history, and now we have me, the chosen one to fulfill this legacy. My parents, Robert and Patricia, were captivated. They've always favored Michael, the golden child who could do no wrong, but this was different. They looked at him like he was actually glowing. My mother had tears in her eyes. My father started clapping. Then Michael turned to me. James, this changes everything. The estate, it's not just a house anymore. It's the foundation of our political dynasty. It's our Camelot, our Kennebunkport. You understand that you'll need to transfer it to me, right? I laughed, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. Over the next few weeks, Michael began what can only be described as a campaign to convince me to give him my inheritance. He created PowerPoint presentations with titles like The Harrison Legacy, From Maintenance to Magnificence, and Why Leadership DNA Requires Ancestral Estates. He'd corner me at every family gathering with new arguments. James, you're a good person, but let's be honest, you're a follower. There's no shame in that. The world needs followers. But leaders, true leaders, we need platforms. This estate is my platform. Think about it strategically. When I'm president, do you want to be known as the brother who enabled greatness or the one who stood in its way? Grandfather didn't know about my destiny when he wrote that will. If he had, everything would be different. The presentations became increasingly elaborate. He hired a graphic designer to create mock-ups of the estate as Harrison Heritage Center, complete with a museum wing dedicated to his future accomplishments. He commissioned a family crest, we don't have one, and had it digitally imposed on photos of the house. My girlfriend Sarah was with me during one of these presentations. Michael spent 90 minutes explaining his theory of leadership genetics, using charts he'd made showing how various historical figures were supposedly connected to our family. According to his research, we were related to Thomas Jefferson, we're not, Churchill, definitely not, and somehow Alexander the Great, I don't even know how he came up with that one. Sarah tried to be polite, but when Michael started explaining how the estate's energy meridians were perfectly aligned for political greatness, she excused herself. I found her in the garden, trying not to laugh. "Is he serious?" she asked. "Dead serious," I replied. The worst part was my parents' reaction. They didn't just tolerate Michael's delusions, they actively encouraged them. My mother started referring to him as Senator, casually in conversation. My father bought him biographies of political leaders and had them delivered to my house with notes like, "For Michael's future library in the estate." Last week reached a new low. Michael sent me a formal letter on letterhead he'd created for his future political campaign. The letterhead featured an eagle, the family crest he'd invented, and the motto "Leadership is Destiny" in Latin, which he'd gotten from Google Translate and was grammatically incorrect. The letter was 8 pages long, single-spaced, and included gems like, "The estate's 40 acres represent the 40 years Moses spent in the desert before claiming his destiny. This is not coincidence but cosmic alignment. Every great political dynasty requires 3 elements: vision, which I possess, capital, which our parents will provide, and an ancestral seat, which you currently occupy against divine will. Your contentment with mediocrity is not a personal failing but a spiritual assignment. You were meant to be the guardian who would preserve the estate until its true master arrived. I have consulted with advisors, his unemployed roommate Kevin and a psychic he found online, who confirmed that the universe is waiting for you to step aside. Consider this. When children read about President Michael Harrison in history books, do you want to be remembered as the brother who recognized greatness or the footnote who tried to obstruct it? My mother called an hour after I received the letter. I expected her to apologize for Michael's behavior or at least acknowledge how absurd this was. Instead, she launched into a prepared speech about recognizing Michael's special gifts. "James, honey, you know Michael is special. He's always been special. Remember when he was 5 and he organized the other children at daycare into a government? That was a sign." I reminded her that the daycare had called them in because Michael was making other kids pay taxes with their snack money and the government was just him eating everyone's cookies. "You see the negative in everything," she replied. That was leadership in its raw form. He was born to rule, James. The estate belongs with someone who'll use it for greatness, not just living. The conversation deteriorated from there. She accused me of jealousy, of being threatened by Michael's potential, of dishonoring Grandpa's memory by keeping the estate from its true purpose. When I pointed out that Grandpa specifically left it to me, she said, "Parents don't always recognize which child carries the gift. Charles loved you, but he didn't live to see Michael's awakening." My father was even worse. He called me at work to discuss the family's political future and my role in the Harrison administration. When I told him there was no Harrison administration and never would be, he sighed deeply and said, "James, throughout history, there have been men who shape the world and men who watch it being shaped. Your brother has the gift. You can't see it because you're too close, but everyone else can." "What everyone?" I asked. "Who besides you and Mom think Michael is destined for political greatness?" "The signs are everywhere," he replied. The woman at the coffee shop said he had presidential energy. His barber mentioned he has the hairline of a leader. These aren't coincidences. I'm exhausted. Sarah and I had planned to start renovating the estate this summer, updating the kitchen while preserving its historical character, converting one of the rooms into a home office, starting a family. We've saved for 2 years for this. Now instead of planning our future, I'm dealing with Michael's delusions and my parents' enabling. Michael hasn't even registered to vote. He's never attended a town hall, never volunteered for a campaign, never shown interest in any political issue beyond how it affects him personally. His entire political philosophy seems to be, I should be in charge because I deserve it. But somehow, I'm the villain for not recognizing his superior leadership DNA. The situation is escalating. Michael has started telling people, anyone who will listen, that he's the rightful heir to the estate and that I'm occupying it temporarily. He's created social media accounts for his non-existent political campaign with bios describing him as future president and heir to the Harrison legacy. He posts daily photos of himself in suits with captions like, "A leader prepares," and "Destiny delayed is not destiny denied." Last night, he texted me at 2 a.m. with a final offer. I transfer the deed to him, and he'll let me live in the guest house as estate manager when I visit. In return, I get to be his senior advisor on practical matters when he's president. He actually used the phrase, "You'll be the Billy Carter of my administration, but respected." I don't know how to handle this anymore. How do I deal with family members who've completely detached from reality? How do I maintain relationships with parents who think I'm selfish for keeping my own inheritance? Michael is now threatening to take this public and rally community support for his cause. Knowing him, this won't end well. Update 1, 3 weeks later. I wanted to thank everyone who responded to my original post. Your comments gave me strength during what's become an even more surreal situation. Many of you warned me that narcissists escalate when they don't get their way. You were absolutely right. Michael has started hosting political fundraisers at MY Estate. Let me explain how this masterpiece of delusion unfolded. 2 weeks ago, my parents called with an urgent request. They needed to host a small family gathering at the property for my Aunt Nancy's birthday while Sarah and I were visiting her parents in Michigan for the weekend. They still had a spare key from when they helped me move in. Despite my better judgment and Sarah's warnings, I agreed. I thought, what's the worst that could happen? It's just a birthday party. I should have known better when my mother asked oddly specific questions. What time will you be back Sunday? Are any of the neighbors likely to be around? Is the sound system in the main room still working? We returned Sunday evening to find campaign signs on my lawn. Not official campaign signs. Michael isn't actually running for anything, but professional quality signs he'd had printed. They read, Harrison Heritage Center, where leadership begins, Michael Harrison, Destiny's Choice, and my personal favorite, The Future Lives Here. My historic family home had been transformed. Banner stands lined the driveway. The fountain had floating LED lights in red, white, and blue. The library, Grandpa's sacred library, had been rearranged into a campaign headquarters, with photos of Michael superimposed next to various presidents and a timeline of his political journey, starting with his birth, labeled A Leader Arrives, and extending to 2060, labeled Global Statesman Phase. My neighbor, Jennifer, filled me in on what I'd missed. Approximately 50 people had attended what Michael marketed as a political salon and fundraiser for future leadership excellence. She'd watched from her window in disbelief as Michael, wearing a tuxedo at 2 p.m. on a Saturday, greeted guests like he was already president. The event featured a 40-minute keynote speech by Michael about his vision for tomorrow's America, a PowerPoint about the estate's destiny as a political landmark, a guided tour where Michael showed guests the future site of the Harrison Presidential Library, an actual fundraising component where people could donate to his pre-campaign fund, a professional photographer documenting everything for his historical record. Jennifer recorded some of it on her phone. The video shows Michael standing on my grandfather's antique desk, the one Grandpa built by hand in 1952, declaring, "From this wooden platform of the past, I launch myself into the future. This desk has supported the weight of history, and now it supports the weight of destiny." The crowd, mostly my parents' friends and Michael's college acquaintances, applauded politely. Some looked confused. Others were clearly there for the open bar Michael had set up using my liquor cabinet. But here's the truly insane part. Michael raised actual money. He collected nearly $3,000 in donations for his non-existent political campaign. When Jennifer asked what office he was seeking, he replied, "The first one that recognizes my calling, then all of them in sequence. City council to the presidency is just a matter of time when you have destiny on your side." My parents didn't just attend, they were co-hosts. They donated $5,000 to their unemployed son's imaginary political campaign. $5,000 they claim they can afford, but I know they can't. My mother gave a speech about recognizing greatness in its infancy, and my father compared Michael to Kennedy, Roosevelt, and somehow Julius Caesar. When I confronted them the next day, they were completely unrepentant. My father sat me down in my own living room, in my grandfather's chair, and delivered a lecture I'll never forget. "James, I'm going to tell you something your grandfather never understood. There are two types of people in this world, those who make history and those who read about it. Your brother is a maker. You're a reader. There's no shame in that, but readers need to step aside when makers are ready to work." I pointed out that Michael has never made anything except problems and debt. "That's because he hasn't had the proper platform," my mother interjected. "You're holding him back. This fundraiser proved people are ready to follow him. Did you see the turnout? The enthusiasm?" I had seen the enthusiasm. Jennifer's video showed people checking their phones during Michael's speech, the caterer rolling her eyes, and at least 3 guests sneaking out early. The only genuine enthusiasm came from Kevin, Michael's roommate/political advisor, who hooped and hollered after every sentence like he was at a wrestling match. The situation escalated when I changed the locks and installed security cameras. Michael had been letting himself in during the day to practice speeches in the great room and absorb the presidential energy of the estate. I found drafts of press releases announcing his intention to transform the property into the spiritual center of American renewal, and blueprints for additions including a democracy dome where the garden is. Michael's response to the lock change was theatrical even by his standards. He showed up with our parents, Kevin, wearing a suit that still had the rental tag on it, and a man he introduced as his legal counsel, actually just someone he met at the fundraiser who watched a lot of Law and Order. They demanded a summit to discuss what Michael called the crisis of succession. He'd prepared a 20-page document titled The Harrison Doctrine, a framework for dynastic transition. It included a detailed analysis of why primogeniture, inheritance by the firstborn, is outdated and anti-democratic, a new theory called meritocratic inheritance, where property goes to the most capable heir, character testimonials from the fundraiser attendees, mostly saying things like, Michael seems very passionate. A section titled The Divine Mathematics of Destiny, involving numerology and the estate's square footage, or a proposed timeline for property transfer with phases like reconciliation period and ascension ceremony. The summit lasted 2 excruciating hours. Michael paced the room like a professor, using a laser pointer to highlight parts of his presentation on a portable screen he'd brought. He explained his theory of leadership DNA in exhausting detail, claiming our family carries a dormant gene for greatness that activated in him during the motivational seminar. It's simple science, he said, pointing to a chart he'd made. Leadership qualities are hereditary but can skip generations. They skipped you, James, which is why Grandpa didn't see my potential. The gene was dormant then. Now it's active, and it demands expression through proper territorial control. Kevin took notes throughout, occasionally interjecting with brilliant or history in the making. The fake lawyer nodded sagely and mumbled about precedent, despite clearly having no idea what was happening. My parents sat through this performance enraptured. When Michael finished with a dramatic declaration that the universe bends toward justice, and justice demands I have this estate, my mother actually applauded. My father wiped away tears and said, Son, you've made your case magnificently. I told them all to leave. Michael's parting words were, You can't fight destiny, James. The universe wants me to have that estate, and the universe always wins. I'll give you 1 week to reconsider before I'm forced to take dramatic action. The dramatic action started 3 days later. Michael began a social media campaign called #JusticeForDestiny. He posts daily videos standing at the estate's gates, violating the 500-foot perimeter I'd requested he maintain, talking about his exile from birthright. He's gained a small following of people who either think he's a performance artist or are genuinely entertained by the spectacle. He's also started a podcast called Destiny Speaks, a future president's journey, where he discusses his political philosophy, which changes weekly, his plans for the estate, and his theories about leadership genetics. Episode titles include Why Democracy Needs Dynasties and My Brother the Obstacle, A Lesson in Overcoming. Update 2, 6 weeks later. The situation has escalated to levels I couldn't have imagined. Michael has retained an actual lawyer and is attempting to legally seize my property. After his social media campaign gained modest traction, mostly people laughing at him, but he interprets all attention as support, Michael found Larry Patterson, a lawyer known for taking bizarre cases for publicity. Larry once sued a cemetery on behalf of a client who claimed his deceased grandmother's ghost wanted to relocate graves. The legal filing is 47 pages of the most insane documentation ever submitted to a court. The grounds for the suit include 1. Undue influence, claiming Grandpa was senile when he wrote his will, despite extensive medical records showing he was completely competent. 2. Breach of family trust. Apparently, keeping your own inheritance violates an implied covenant of dynastic succession. 3. Manifest destiny. Yes, they actually cited manifest destiny as a legal principle. 4. Psychological damages. Michael claims being denied the estate has caused him severe leadership suppression syndrome, not a real condition. 5. Public interest, arguing that Michael's political destiny serves the public good, therefore the estate should be his. The filing includes extraordinary evidence. Character testimonials from fundraiser attendees, most saying variations of, Michael seems to really want the house. A genealogical study Michael commissioned from a website that creates fake noble lineages for $299. Screenshots of his social media followers as proof of his natural leadership magnetism. A psychological evaluation from Dr. Patricia Summers, not a real doctor, but a life coach with an online certificate, stating Michael has unprecedented leadership potential. Architectural plans for the estate's conversion to a leadership institute. Letters of support from Kevin and 12 other people who are all suspiciously named variations of Smith and Jones. A comparative analysis of other political dynasties and their estates. Photos of Michael at the estate throughout his childhood as evidence of his spiritual connection to the land. But the real shock came when I learned how this lawsuit is being funded. My parents have taken out a second mortgage on their house, $100,000 at a predatory interest rate from a lender Larry recommended. They're risking their retirement, their home, everything they've worked for, to fund Michael's delusion. I discovered this when I received a call from my Aunt Nancy, horrified that my parents had asked her for an additional $20,000 loan. She drove to their house and found it transformed into another campaign headquarters. Every wall covered with photos of Michael, timelines of his imaginary political career, and maps showing how the estate will be developed into his power base. I tried one more intervention. I drove to their house with boxes of evidence. Financial projections showing they'll lose their home, statistics about frivolous lawsuits, information about actual political careers, medical articles about narcissistic personality disorder. I even brought testimonials from family members concerned about their behavior. My father wouldn't even look at the documents. James, when Michael is president, and he will be president, none of this will matter. We're investing in history. Every great family makes sacrifices for their chosen one. My mother was surrounded by scrapbooks she'd created documenting Michael's journey to greatness. Volume 1 started with his birth certificate labeled The Arrival of Destiny, and included every participation trophy, school photo, and random achievement. Volume 5, still in progress, was titled The Persecution Phase, and featured printouts of my text messages asking them to see reason. One day, she said, holding a photo of 5-year-old Michael in a Superman costume, these will be in the Smithsonian. Mothers always know when their child is special. I knew from the moment he was born. The nurse said he cried louder than any baby she'd heard. That was his first speech, James. His first declaration of greatness. The legal harassment has been relentless. Beyond the main lawsuit, Michael has filed complaints with the city about my property maintenance, all dismissed. He petitioned the Historical Society to review ownership. They told him to stop wasting their time. Started a Change.org petition with 312 signatures, mostly bots he paid for. Contacted local media, only one blogger covered it, mockingly. Attempted to have the estate designated as a future historical landmark, based on his anticipated presidency. Filed a complaint with the EPA claiming I'm not maintaining the land properly for its future political significance. The restraining order I had to obtain after he was caught trying to host another event is consistently violated. He stands exactly 501 feet away with binoculars, live streaming his observations to his followers. These streams feature commentary like, "You can see the main house from here, temporarily occupied by my brother, but spiritually empty without its true master. Notice how the birds fly over the property in circular patterns. Nature itself recognizes the estate's destiny. I feel the pull of the land even from here. It calls to me, begging for leadership." Last week's court hearing was surreal. Michael showed up in a full tuxedo with a red, white, and blue tie. Kevin and my parents sat behind him like a tiny entourage. He insisted on standing every time he was mentioned, treating it like a political debate. When the judge asked Larry to explain the legal basis for manifest destiny as property law, Larry actually said, "Your Honor, when destiny manifests, the law must adapt." The judge's expression was priceless. Michael requested to make a statement. Over Larry's objections, the judge allowed it, probably out of morbid curiosity. Michael delivered a 15-minute speech about his vision for America, his leadership genetics theory, and how denying him the estate was denying America its future. He concluded by saying, "Your Honor, you have the power to change history today. Grant me my birthright, and I promise you'll have a federal judgeship when I'm president." The judge called a recess, probably to laugh in private. Update 3, final, 2 months later. This is my final update. The legal battle is over, but the family damage is permanent. The lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice last week. The judge's ruling was devastating to Michael's case and included memorable lines. The court finds no legal basis for the plaintiff's claims, which appear to be based entirely on personal delusions of grandeur rather than any recognized legal principle. Manifest destiny, even if it were a valid legal concept, which it emphatically is not, would not apply to a family property dispute in Virginia. The plaintiff's belief in his own political future, however sincere, does not constitute grounds for property transfer. The court strongly encourages the plaintiff to pursue his political ambitions through conventional means, such as actually running for office, rather than through frivolous litigation. This case represents one of the most egregious wastes of judicial resources this court has encountered in 23 years on the bench. The judge also ordered Michael to pay my legal fees of $47,000, which he obviously can't do since he's never held a job for more than 3 months. The dismissal should have been a wake-up call. Instead, Michael held a press conference on the courthouse steps. No actual press attended, just Kevin with his iPhone and my parents with a camcorder. Michael, still in his tuxedo, declared this a temporary setback orchestrated by the establishment, and compared himself to Nelson Mandela, Gandhi, and Jesus Christ in the same sentence. My parents stood behind him, applauding. When a confused passerby asked what was happening, my mother handed them a flyer about Michael's persecution and said, "You're witnessing history. Remember this moment." The real tragedy is my parents' financial situation. The predatory loan has a 29% interest rate with hidden fees. They've burned through their entire retirement savings, maxed out credit cards, and borrowed from every relative who would listen. Total debt, approximately $200,000. All for a lawsuit that any competent lawyer would have told them was hopeless. They're losing their house next month. Foreclosure proceedings have begun. When I offered to help with conditions, Michael gets therapy, they acknowledge reality, they refused. My father said, "We don't abandon greatness when it faces adversity. This is our Churchill moment." My mother added, "You'll regret this when Michael proves everyone wrong. We're moving in with Nancy temporarily, but Michael says this is just part of his origin story. Every president has a period of struggle. They're now living with my Aunt Nancy, who only agreed because she felt sorry for them. Michael lives in their basement, which he's designated as his government in exile. He streams daily from there, discussing his political philosophy to an audience of approximately 12 people, half of whom are there to mock him. His latest project is a 500-page memoir titled Delayed, My Journey Through Injustice to Inevitable Greatness. He posts excerpts on social media hourly. Sample, the estate may be temporarily beyond my reach, but you cannot cage an eagle born to soar. My wings are simply gathering strength for the inevitable flight to greatness. He still hasn't registered to vote. When asked about this by his few genuine followers, he claimed, "I don't participate in the current system because I am destined to transcend it." The extended family is completely fractured. Half think I should have just given him the estate to keep peace. The other half are horrified by my parents' enabling. Thanksgiving was cancelled. Christmas will likely be the same. Family relationships that survived decades have been destroyed by Michael's delusions and my parents' enabling. But there have been some positive developments. Sarah and I are engaged now. We held our engagement party at the estate, in the same room where Michael once stood on Grandpa's desk proclaiming his greatness. It was beautiful, filled with people who actually care about us rather than about reflected glory from imaginary achievements. Michael found out about the engagement and sent a formal letter on his fake letterhead offering to officiate. When we declined, he offered to give a speech about leadership in matrimony. When we declined that, he offered to grant his blessing as the family's spiritual patriarch. We didn't respond to that one. He then created a 20-minute video about how our engagement was actually a sign that the universe was preparing for his eventual ownership of the estate because new beginnings require proper foundations. The mental gymnastics were impressive even for him. The local newspaper finally covered the story properly. The headline was, "Local Family Destroyed by Delusion, a Cautionary Tale." The article was sympathetic to me but devastating to Michael's political future. His response was to claim the media was afraid of tomorrow's leaders, and part of a conspiracy to suppress destiny. He started a new organization called the Destiny Movement, with Kevin as vice president and my parents as the board of directors. Total membership, 4, including Kevin's girlfriend who joined out of pity. They meet weekly in Nancy's basement to discuss their policy positions, which mainly consist of why Michael deserves things. Their latest campaign is trying to get the estate designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site based on its future historical significance as the birthplace of the Harrison political dynasty. UNESCO hasn't responded to their letters. Michael recently announced he's running for president in 2028. Not starting with any lower office, straight to president. His platform consists entirely of restoring destiny to America. When asked about specific policies, he says, "Details are for managers. Leaders provide vision." He's created a shadow cabinet from his 4 followers. Kevin is Secretary of State, my mother is Secretary of Education, my father is Treasury Secretary, and Kevin's girlfriend is somehow both Attorney General and Secretary of Defense. They hold actual meetings where they discuss their plans for when we take power. I've had to implement serious security at the estate. Cameras, alarms, and a security company that does regular checks. Michael still violates the restraining order weekly, standing 501 feet away with signs that say things like, "Injustice lives here," and "History will remember." Sarah and I are in couples counseling to deal with the stress. We're planning our wedding, but we can't even send save the dates because we know Michael will try to turn it into his political platform. We're considering eloping just to avoid the inevitable drama. The saddest part is watching my parents deteriorate. They've aged 10 years in 6 months. They're living in my aunt's guest room, sleeping on air mattresses, eating ramen noodles, but still talking about Michael's inevitable rise to power. They've created a shrine to him in their room with his photos, his fake awards, mostly things he printed himself, and a countdown calendar to the 2028 election. My mother calls occasionally to update me on Michael's progress. Recent achievements include getting 3 retweets from a verified Twitter account, it was a bot. Being interviewed by a podcast with 11 subscribers. Successfully predicting it would rain, proof of his connection to universal forces. Writing letters to world leaders, none have responded. Creating a TikTok that got 200 views, mostly people making fun of him. Each of these is treated like a major victory, proof that the tide is turning in Michael's favor. The estate stands strong, just as Grandpa wanted. Sarah and I are slowly making it our own while preserving its history. We planted a garden where Michael wanted to build his democracy dome. We restored the library he'd turned into his campaign headquarters. We're living the quiet, meaningful life Grandpa envisioned when he left it to me. Sometimes I stand in Grandpa's workshop, surrounded by his tools and projects, and wonder what he'd think of all this. I found a letter he'd written but never sent, dated a month before he died. It was addressed to me. James, I'm leaving you the estate not just because you love it, but because you understand what it really is, not a symbol of power or platform for glory, but a home. A place for family, for memories, for the quiet work of living a good life. Your brother may one day understand this, though I doubt it. Your parents may push you to give in to his demands. Don't. Some things are worth preserving not for what they could become, but for what they are. The estate is one of those things. You are its proper guardian. He knew. Somehow, he knew what was coming. Last week, Michael announced his next move. He's starting his own political party called the Destiny Party. Its platform is just one line, restoring what was always meant to be. He's already designed merchandise, despite having no actual supporters to buy it. My parents spent their food budget on having bumper stickers printed. He also announced that when he becomes president, his first executive order will be to seize the estate through eminent domain for the public good. When someone pointed out that's not how executive orders work, he replied, "They'll work however I decide they work when I'm in charge." As I write this final update, Michael is probably in Nancy's basement practicing his inaugural address in the mirror. My parents are probably watching, applauding, planning which rooms they'll occupy in the White House. They're living in complete poverty, destroyed their relationships, lost everything, all for a fantasy that will never come true. But I've learned something through all this. You can't save people from themselves. You can't love someone into sanity. You can't reason with delusion. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is maintain boundaries and live in reality, even when everyone tells you you're wrong. The estate remains with its rightful owner. Sarah and I will raise our children here, surrounded by actual history rather than imagined destiny. They'll learn woodworking in Grandpa's shop, read in the library, play in the gardens. They'll learn that real achievement comes from work, not entitlement, that real leadership means service, not domination, that real family means love, not enable delusion. And yes, Michael still sends weekly updates about his political progress. The latest announced he's considering running for Pope after his presidency, despite not being Catholic. He's also exploring whether he can declare himself King of Virginia through some obscure colonial law he misunderstood on Wikipedia. He still hasn't registered to vote. To anyone dealing with similar family dynamics, hold your ground. Reality matters. Truth matters. Don't let anyone, even family, gaslight you into supporting their delusions. It's not cruel to refuse to enable someone's fantasy. It's the most honest form of love there is. The estate stands. The delusions continue. But I've chosen reality, and that's the only choice that matters. Thank you to everyone who followed this bizarre journey. Your support meant everything. And remember, when someone tells you they're destined for greatness and demands your property to achieve it, believe them when they show you who they really are, and then change your locks.